What you may not know about me is something I hold very close to my heart. I saw the devastating effects this disease had on my father and the challenges that came with managing MS at a time when there were no approved treatment options.
She was one of Hollywood's brightest faces. Then, she chose silence over fame. Madeleine Stowe's disappearance wasn't a fall, but a turning point. The reasons behind that choice tell a story far bigger than Hollywood ever admitted. Now, decades later, the truth is emerging. What really happened to Madeleine Stowe? And what secret choices pulled her away from Hollywood fame? If you trace Madeleine's journey all the way to the beginning, you'll see a moment that feels almost out of place compared to the career she eventually built. Most people overlook this part of her story, but it explains more than you'd think. Let's rewind to where everything truly started: the origins and tragedy. Madeleine Stowe was born on August 18, 1958, in Los Angeles, into a home that carried more history than anyone around her would have guessed. Her father, Robert, worked as a civil engineer from Oregon. Her mother, Mireya, grew up in Costa Rica in a family tied to the country's political past. Her great-great-grandfather, Bruno Carranza, served briefly as president of Costa Rica in 1870. It wasn't something Madeleine bragged about, but it shows how far back her roots reached, long before her name meant anything to Hollywood. It is the kind of detail that makes you look twice at how stories begin. Madeleine Stowe grew up in Eagle Rock, a neighborhood tucked between the busier parts of Los Angeles. The house was warm, modest, and filled with 3 kids, yet everything changed before Madeleine was old enough to make sense of it. When she was just 3 years old, her father, Robert, began to show signs of multiple sclerosis. At an age when children usually learn their colors or favorite games, she was watching her father's strength slip away one small piece at a time. It set the tone for a childhood that would never follow the pattern she expected. By the time she turned 5, Robert needed crutches to move around the house. A year later, when it seemed like the crutches were no longer enough, he transitioned to using a wheelchair, and the family's daily routine shifted with him. Her mother managed the household while also caring for a man losing control of his own body. The home became more like a makeshift hospital, with her mother and children stepping in as caregivers, helping with bathing, dressing, and attending to all his needs. These were tasks far beyond their years, the kind that teach responsibility long before a child is ready to carry it. And it brought a huge burden into their home that couldn't be ignored. For young Madeleine, the house that should have felt safe was full of tension. She once said that, "Sometimes I felt like I lacked mercy, and I judged him when I shouldn't have, because I didn't fully understand. I thought sometimes his disease was actually something in his character." Only later would she realize how wrong that feeling was. However, through all that, her childhood twisted into something more complicated. While other kids ran around outside, she learned how to manage fragile moments inside her home. She watched her father fight a battle he couldn't win, and she watched her mother do everything she could to hold the family steady. Being the oldest meant she saw almost everything before her siblings did. She became a caregiver without asking for the role, and a witness to slow loss before most children experience anything close to it. "I became with my mother, my father's nursemaid," Madeleine recalled. And there was still more about those years that would follow her into the life she built later. What happened next didn't come from her childhood or her surroundings. It came from a place far outside her world, and it changed more than she realized at the time. The Russian connection. When Madeleine Stowe was only 10 years old, she discovered a place she could disappear into, which was the piano. It became more than an instrument to her because, at home, life carried a burden she couldn't escape. And the instrument she played offered a quiet world where she didn't have to explain, watch, or worry. Each note gave her a momentary freedom, a pause from the invisible pressures around her. Those hours at the piano felt like stepping into her own secret space, a place that belonged entirely to her. It was in that world that she met Sergei Tarnowski. Now, Tarnowski wasn't just a regular teacher. He had taught at the Kiev Conservatory and trained some of the greatest pianists of his generation. He had survived Stalinist Russia, fled a life that could have swallowed him, and brought a legacy of discipline, artistry, and history with him. When Madeleine began lessons with him, she stepped into a universe shaped by decades of brilliance and struggle. Learning under Tarnowski was different from anything she had known, and it wasn't solely about playing the right notes. It was about understanding music, about feeling it and letting it move through her. Even as he grew older and frail, he demanded devotion. He listened to her play from behind a trellis in his garden, letting the sound reach him as he lay in his final years. For her, those lessons must have felt sacred, a link between haunted family memories and something pure. Every chord and every soft release of a key was a fragile moment she could make on her own. Under Tarnowski's gentle guidance, she learned not just technique, but also how to breathe life into music. In that space, she could balance grief and hope, pain and calm. But life sometimes closes chapters without warning. In 1976, Tarnowski died, ending not just a life, but a mentorship that had anchored her. She was only 18 at the time. The teacher who had given her sanctuary, who had offered her guidance and a rare kind of patience, was gone. She felt the loss deeply and decided to step away from music entirely. Later explaining to interviewers, she just felt it was time to not be by myself anymore. The piano, which had been her escape and her voice, now felt like a memory she could not carry forward in the same way. However, walking away from music did not close the door on her talent. It shifted it. The lessons, the discipline, and the patience she learned under Tarnowski quietly moved with her into other pursuits. The Russian connection, with all its history, devotion, and intensity, left a lasting mark on her, even if she never pressed another key in that same way. While the piano became a close chapter, the lessons she carried became the foundation for a new path, one that would eventually bring her into the spotlight in a very different way: the accidental actress. When Madeleine left music behind, it wasn't because she wanted to abandon discipline or creativity. She had simply reached a point where playing alone no longer filled the space around her. She needed something different, something that brought her into the world rather than kept her confined to it. And that something began at the University of Southern California, where she enrolled to study cinema and journalism. Her time there was unconventional. She hadn't planned to act or even dreamt of the spotlight. Her life had always been shaped by circumstance, and now it was about to change again, in a way she could never have predicted. Her first steps into the world of performance were modest. She started acting in theater, performing at the Beverly Hills Solaris Theater. It was a small local production, far from the fame of Hollywood, but it gave her a place to explore creativity in a new way. One day, while volunteering and handing out programs at the theater, a talent agent noticed her. He asked if Madeleine wanted to act, and she said yes. That single moment changed everything, proving that sometimes opportunity arrives without warning and reshapes life entirely. Her breakthrough came in 1987 with the film Stakeout, where she starred alongside Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez. The movie opened at #1 at the box office, and suddenly her name was on the map. People began to notice her presence on screen, the way she could carry a scene effortlessly while remaining relatable and grounded. It was the kind of debut that made both audiences and industry insiders pay attention. Through the late 1980s, her momentum built steadily. She appeared in Tropical Snow in 1988, Worth Winning in 1989, and Revenge in 1990. She also had a supporting role in The Two Jakes that same year. Each role added layers to her experience, teaching her how to navigate the pressures of the film world while honing her craft. Unlike some actors who stumble through early years, Madeleine approached every part with focus, quietly transforming herself into a performer who could handle more demanding roles. The early 1990s brought her to another level. In 1992, she starred in Unlawful Entry, a crime thriller that further solidified her credibility in Hollywood. Later that year, she was cast opposite Kurt Russell in The Last of the Mohicans. The film became a massive success, grossing more than $75 million worldwide. Her performance drew praise for its intensity and authenticity, elevating her to A-list status almost overnight. Suddenly, she wasn't just a talented newcomer. She was a recognized force on the screen. In 1993, she appeared in Shortcuts, a critically acclaimed ensemble film that highlighted her range and ability to inhabit complex characters. For her role, she won the National Society of Film Critics Award for Best Supporting Actress. Recognition came not because she sought it, but because her work spoke for itself. She had transitioned from a chance encounter at a theater to a career that demanded attention and respect, all without planning to be in this world in the first place. Madeleine Stowe's rise from a young pianist to a celebrated actress was neither planned nor predictable. It came from openness, opportunity, and an instinct to take chances, even when the path was unclear. Every decision, from studying cinema at USC to volunteering at the Solaris Theater, led her closer to the big screen. And as her story continued, the challenges of fame, the pressures of Hollywood, and the roles that would define her were waiting just around the corner. The golden cage, beauty, typecasting, and Hollywood's dark side. After her rapid rise in Hollywood, Madeleine found herself in a world that celebrated her like a jewel and trapped her like one at the same time. In 1994, when People magazine named her one of the 50 most beautiful people in the world, the announcement brought a wave of attention. The industry applauded her looks long before it tried to understand her mind or her abilities. The praise seemed harmless at first, though it carried some sort of stereotype she didn't see coming. Beauty, once a compliment, started turning into a wall she had to push through. Soon, the roles coming her way mirrored the same narrow idea. She was placed into characters who floated through scenes with grace, gazed into the distance with longing, or existed mainly as a romantic interest. Directors admired her presence, but they rarely asked who she could become on screen. It didn't matter that she had a sharp mind, a strong work ethic, or an appetite for complex characters. What mattered was that she fit a mold. The more it happened, the more she felt locked into a version of herself that wasn't hers. In one interview that year with Los Angeles Times, Madeleine spoke with unusual honesty about the pressure. She pointed out how Hollywood conditioned women to play softness while men were handed strength. She didn't hide her irritation, and her bluntest line said everything. She admitted, "I have fought that softness in myself. Softness bores the hell out of me." Madeleine explained that she had spent years trying to resist being turned into something gentle and predictable. This confession pulled back the curtain on what she had been fighting behind the scenes and hinted at how deep the struggle ran. She refused to be boxed in as a pretty face with no edge. And because of that refusal, she began choosing roles that pushed her further than what executives expected. Her role in 12 Monkeys gave her room to explore a character who had fear, intelligence, resilience, and doubt all at once. Acting beside Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt, she showed a range the industry often pretended she didn't have. The recognition she earned from that performance proved she was capable of far more than the quiet, dreamlike personas she had been offered earlier. It was a small victory in a long battle over how she was seen. Her next major film, The General's Daughter, placed her in a position of real authority. Playing a warrant officer who investigates military crimes, she delivered a grounded, serious performance. The movie performed well and gave her another opportunity to step away from the beauty-first image that had held her captive. Yet, even inside that success, there were moments that showed her how hard it was to hold on to control. Storylines were changed, and certain parts of her performance were shaped in ways she hadn't anticipated. The industry had a habit of pulling women back toward a familiar outline, even when they were cast in strong roles. Through these years, Madeleine saw the pattern clearly. The cage wasn't built out of malice. It was built out of expectations that people rarely questioned. She was encouraged to stay beautiful, stay gentle, stay appealing, and stay within the limits set for her. She had the range, but the system had the boundaries. And every time she fought her way into a richer or tougher role, she felt the tension of walking against the current. Still, Madeleine didn't surrender. She continued turning down scenes that felt demeaning and walked away from scripts that valued her appearance more than her skill. She chose projects that aligned with her sense of self, even when it meant saying no to opportunities that others thought she should accept. She wanted honesty in her job, and she was willing to lose roles to protect that. Over time, she learned how to navigate the cage without letting it define her. She chose her steps carefully and used each project to reclaim pieces of her identity. Viewers saw a star with poise and confidence, yet inside she was quietly choosing which parts of the industry she allowed to shape her. She learned that the battle wasn't about escaping beauty. It was about refusing to let beauty strip away depth. And as she moved forward, she sensed something shifting inside herself. Staying in the spotlight would only matter if she could stand there with her full identity, not the one the system preferred. This realization pushed her toward a turning point that would lead her into the next major chapter of her life, where the cost of fame would reveal itself in ways even she didn't expect. The industry's pressure. After stepping away from the narrow boxes Hollywood kept putting her in, Madeleine Stowe felt something deeper tugging at her. Even with the more serious roles she earned, there was a quiet part of her that wanted space to breathe. Around 1994, she and her husband, Brian Benben, bought a cattle ranch in Texas. Madeleine told the Los Angeles newspaper that she needed to be alone and needed to be outdoors. The ranch was the first place in years where the uproar of fame couldn't reach her, and that silence would mean more than she realized. Speaking of her husband, Brian Benben, this man wasn't simply her partner, he was the steady presence she leaned on. Born in Winchester, Virginia, Benben built his career across theater, television, and film long before life on a ranch ever crossed their minds. His breakout moment came in the early 1980s with The Gangster Chronicles, a project where he and Madeleine first met. What started as an on-screen connection became something real, and they got married soon after. Their bond became the foundation for a life that didn't revolve around cameras, and that shift was about to play a bigger role than either of them expected. The couple shared a vision of balance, a way to keep Hollywood from swallowing their lives. For Madeleine, the ranch wasn't an escape from acting. It was a return to herself. She once said acting was ideally suited to her real passion for her rancher's life. and admitted she enjoyed it because you spend brief amounts of time with other people and then you just leave. Those words revealed how exhausted she felt from the constant eyes on her and hinted that the land was starting to pull her in a direction she couldn't ignore. Life on the ranch, surrounded by acres of open sky, began to reveal a truth she never said out loud. Hollywood offered visibility, but the ranch offered peace. And as the years went on, that peace became harder to walk away from. It made city life feel heavier and made film sets feel more draining. This contrast would only sharpen as another storm picked up around her. Also, during the late 1990s, ageism in the industry grew louder than anyone wanted to admit. Women over 35 years saw doors close fast, no matter their talent or history. Madeleine had fought hard to be taken seriously as an actress with depth. Yet the industry's expectations were shifting, and not in her favor. Because scripts slowed down and opportunities thinned out. The message was subtle, but it hurt all the same, and it left her facing a reality no performer ever wants to confront. It wasn't as though she wasn't fading. It was more like the industry was narrowing, and for someone who had already built a life beyond the spotlight, that change forced a new kind of reckoning. Acting was still part of her, but it no longer defined her, and the ranch kept reminding her that she didn't need Hollywood to feel whole. What happened next didn't arrive in a dramatic way, however. It changed the entire direction of her life. And the reasons behind it might surprise you. The disappearance, motherhood, choice, and the courage to walk away. By the mid-1990s, Madeleine Stowe stood in a place most actors only dream of, and her name was already very well known to audiences. Yet inside, something began to shift. The rush of success no longer held the same pull it once did. It was a quiet change, the kind that grows slowly until it can no longer be ignored. And when it was exactly 1996, she made a choice that stunned the industry. Madeleine stepped back and postponed a soaring career to focus on her family. Despite the fact that it was a simple decision, it held more meaning than anyone outside her home could see. The question that lingered was, why exactly was that moment the turning point? Well, not long after she and her husband packed up their lives and moved to a ranch in Texas, they had their daughter, May. And suddenly, the world that once revolved around scripts and studio schedules shifted into early mornings, fresh air, and a child discovering life one small moment at a time. The ranch was not an escape, as many assumed. It was a decision to create a life where the uproar of Hollywood did not drown out what mattered most. Hollywood lived on deadlines and expectations, while the ranch offered space, peace, and room to breathe. That contrast raised another question many still ask today. What did she see in that quiet life that fame could never give her? Even after leaving the center of the Hollywood storm, she continued to work, though her choices changed. In 1998, she appeared in The Proposition and Playing by Heart. In the years that followed, she returned in Imposter and We Were Soldiers. Each project added to her resume, yet none carried the firestorm of her earlier hits. Some releases struggled at the box office, and others received limited attention. Her presence never fully disappeared, though it became clear her focus had shifted. This particular shift raised its own kind of curiosity. Was she still chasing the next great role? Or had her priorities settled somewhere far from the glare of the spotlight? Throughout this period, her appearances became less frequent, almost scattered across the late 90s and early 2000s. She explored smaller films and meaningful stories. She took on television work, including Saving Millie, which allowed her to dive into emotional territory, though nothing reached the height she once climbed. From the outside, it seemed like a fad, yet those closest to her understood it far differently. She chose stability, she chose the rhythm of family, and she chose a quiet life over headlines. And when we begin to wonder, could her childhood experiences and the hard memories she carried have shaped her need for a quieter path? When viewed as a whole, her journey forms a striking arc. She faced hardship early in life, climbed her way into Hollywood's top tier, then stepped away at the very moment most stars cling even tighter. Her story captivates not because she stayed in the spotlight, but because she allowed herself to leave it. The glamour, the pressure, and the constant attention never defined her. What defined her was the courage to say no to a world that rarely accepts that answer. Even now, people still look back and wonder what she gained when she walked away. And that brings us to the question that continues to echo through her story. When a star walks away from the height of fame to live a life most people never see, what comes next? The comeback. After years of silence, the industry had nearly counted Madeleine Stowe out. She had stepped away to raise her daughter and build a quieter life on her ranch, far from studio lots and packed sets. It was a world where no one asked for retakes or approvals. Still, something in her didn't disappear. It waited. And in 2011, that quiet spark found the opening it needed, setting the stage for a return no one expected. The moment she signed on to play Victoria Grayson in the ABC drama Revenge, everyone was surprised. Hollywood had known her for roles in films such as The Last of the Mohicans, 12 Monkeys, Shortcuts, Stakeout, The General's Daughter, Bad Girls, China Moon, Blink, We Were Soldiers, and others. Yet none of those characters held the kind of power she was about to unleash. Revenge premiered on September 21st, 2011, and viewers immediately gravitated toward the elegant and dangerous matriarch she brought to life. The show soon became ABC's strongest performer in its time slot since Lost. People didn't simply watch Victoria Grayson. They studied, feared, and admired her. And with that, Madeleine's return was sealed. What everyone began to think now was how far this resurgence could take her. Now, Victoria Grayson wasn't the type of character Hollywood had been offering Madeleine earlier in her career. This time she stepped into a role with layers and sharp corners, someone who held the room without raising her voice, and critics noticed right away. In 2012, she earned a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress in a television series drama. It was the kind of recognition she hadn't been given in years, and it confirmed that Madeleine wasn't making a simple comeback. She was showing the industry what it had been missing. And this raised a new curiosity about what she would do next. Over the next 4 seasons, she appeared in 89 episodes and anchored the show's emotional center. Victoria Grayson's presence carried a weight that pulled audiences in week after week. At 55, Madeleine dismantled the idea that actresses over 35 fade into the background. She stood tall in a role built on intelligence, nuance, and controlled fire. However, when she was asked about it, the actress surprisingly admitted to New Beauty that she wasn't really comfortable with her age. Getting older and the whole concept of aging gracefully was really interesting for me. You want to buck up against it and then you hit 50. When I got to that age, all of a sudden, I finally felt this incredible sense of liberation. You sort of let go of everything. People connected with that truth, though many wondered how she managed to stay grounded through a role that demanded so much. The strength of her performance came from those years she was away. Time on the ranch gave her a kind of steadiness, and space from Hollywood offered clarity. When Revenge wrapped up 2015, Madeleine's role there left a mark. She didn't return to chase old glory or revive a fading image. She came back with something new to offer and delivered it without hesitation. But even with this success, and after proving she could command television again, what direction would her journey take next? Advocacy and new projects. Even after reclaiming her place on screen, Madeleine Stowe's life had shifted in ways that went far beyond acting. The memories of her father battling with multiple sclerosis stayed with her. She remembered every appointment, every hospital visit, every moment of quiet worry, carrying the hope that things could be different. Those experiences left her with empathy and perspective that few could match, and a sense that silence about struggle could be dangerous. In 2014, Madeleine became the face of the campaign Lights, Camera, Take Action on Multiple Sclerosis, organized by Genzyme. Across the country, she shared her family's story, visited patients, spoke with neurologists, and encouraged conversations about illnesses that were often avoided. She urged families to be open, to reach out for help, and to recognize the emotional weight that diseases like MS carry. This was advocacy rooted in personal truth, a way of turning her own experience into something meaningful for others. Her activism didn't stop there. She joined forces with Artists for Peace and Justice to support communities in Haiti. Through that work, she helped build access to free secondary education, ensuring that children with few opportunities could still have a chance to learn, grow, and dream. Every donation went straight to the cause, and Madeleine used her visibility to give voice to those often overlooked. She wasn't just lending her name. She was lending her time, energy, and heart. Even with her focus on advocacy, acting remained part of her life. But now, it was on her terms. In 2019, she appeared in the Netflix series Soundtrack, playing Margot Weston in a recurring role. In 2023, she stepped into the HBO prequel series, It, Welcome to Derry, as Ingrid Kirsch, the younger version of the terrifying Mrs. Kirsch from It Chapter 2. Director Andy Muschietti noted that securing her for the role expanded the character, giving the story depth and complexity. Madeleine brought experience, presence, and subtle intensity to a part that could have easily been one-dimensional, making Ingrid Kirsch chilling, real, and unforgettable. Away from the cameras, Madeleine's life remains steady and intentional. She continues to split her time between her ranch in Texas and select acting projects, keeping her work meaningful rather than constant. Her nearly 40-year marriage to actor Brian Benben is a foundation of support and partnership. Her daughter, May Theodora, her home, and the quiet rhythms of ranch life anchor her. Looking across her decades-long career, it's obvious that Madeleine Stowe's story isn't about chasing fame or accumulating accolades. From her early rise in Hollywood to her advocacy and carefully chosen roles later in life, she has crafted a life that blends public impact with personal fulfillment. But then, do you think Madeleine Stowe's story is proof that women must escape Hollywood to preserve their identity? Or does it reveal a system designed to push talented actresses aside once they stop fitting a mold? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. To enjoy more content like this, click on the next video on your screen.